If we could get people to grab their seats so we can get started again, I want to welcome everybody back. This is always the tough part because we take a break and you start all those great conversations, and then I get to be the mean stepmother and say, let's sit back down. So let's get everybody warmed up with another ARS question. And this is going to be for the state members only, for state government only. So, how would you categorize your IT budget this fiscal year? A, increased by 10% or more. B, flat. C, by the way, those that say A, I'm wanting to talk to you later. C, decreased by 10% or less. D, reduced by more than 10%. And E, what budget? There's that darn North Dakota again. 45% of us said that our budgets were going to stay flat, and 21% said we're going to reduce them by 10% or less. I guess that's a good sign that the economy is improving, so that makes me feel a little bit better. Let's try another budget question for the state members and talk about it. With tight state budgets, how are you addressing the business needs being driven by technology trends? A, implementing the least expensive solutions to problems as they arise. B, consulting with a trusted partner to predict future trends and addressing them ahead of time. C, always focusing on predicted ROI and TCO when making technology purchases. I thought at first nobody answered. 52% of us said C. That's good to hear. Let's move into our next session. We're pleased to have with us the Public Technology Institute, PTI, membership join us for this session. I just talked to Ellen, and he said that he's probably got 50 plus members here, so that's great. We're glad you're here. We've had a lot of shared interests, and we've tried to share knowledge between the two organizations for several years. So it's great that we can learn from each other. Alan Shark is the CEO and Executive Director of PTI, and he's going to be the discussion facilitator for this panel. Alan's career has spanned over 30 years as highly recognized leader in both the nonprofit management and technology fields, with an emphasis on technology applications for business and government. Please join me in welcoming Alan.
Good morning. Thanks. You see, I even bring my own teleprompter. Isn't that amazing? I'd like to invite our panelists to come on up as I say a few opening remarks, if I might. I've learned a new word when it comes to trust. Trust is when you get mic'd up for this event first and then inform the people that you're going to the men's room. And they assured me that I had nothing to worry about, that it was truly on but not really on. That's trust. The second thing I wanted to mention is, I don't know about you, but I am so relieved to know that today is a federal holiday, so finally we have an honest day when federal employees can be off and relax. So the third thing I want to say is, very seriously, I want to thank the leadership of NASIO, the staff, and the members for letting this happen. This is the third year that the public technology members have been allowed to, or we're sharing in a kind of a common venue where we have our separate meetings and we kind of come together for this. We were part of the reception last night. I think it's so important to have one meeting a year where we have CIOs from the states and the cities and counties come together and share. And it's amazing to see how many people in our crowd said, I haven't even met my state CIO until I came here, so that's great. We hope to do more of this together, but our working relationship with Doug and the staff and you, the members, have been just so wonderful. It's just a wonderful example of how two organizations in Washington can work together. Oh, wait a minute, one's in Kentucky, that's why. Okay. We're going to talk about innovation, keeping the trains running on time. You know, that's kind of an oxymoron. How do those two things happen? When Mark Twain was asked about name the greatest of all inventions, he used the word accident. And he basically said, because so many things that happen by accident. So there are two words that come to mind. One is creative, and other is innovation. They're not the same, but they're used almost interchangeably, because creative is developing something entirely new. Innovation is the application of better solutions that meet new requirements, articulate needs or existing market needs, and this is accomplished through more effective products, processes, services, technologies, or ideas that are readily available to markets, government, and society. So I thought that was kind of interesting in the sense that we kind of look at innovation to be something that is magic. But yet, when I look at what governments do across the United States and elsewhere, in many ways we do perform magic. And the numbers from citizens reflect that in terms of the high ratings, relatively high ratings, especially compared to those in the federal sector, of how well we do, because we are probably closer to our citizens. So we have a panel, and my job is really to make sure the panel stays on time. And so I need to stop and say who our panelists are. First, we have the CIO of Philadelphia, and well known to you, former CIO of the state of New Jersey, Adele Abib. But the happiest CIO is sitting next to him, Bill Oates, the CIO from the city of Boston.
Thank you.
For those of you who are sports agnostic, you probably don't know what I just said, but they had a really good day yesterday, so they're beaming. And then we have Michael Powell, Chief Information Officer of the state of Maryland. And then we have John Delinsky, Director of Innovation, the Governor's Office, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So I'm going to take my seat, and I'd like to start off with Bill, and we're just going to go around and have some introductory remarks, and then we're going to have a discussion. And somewhere close into this presentation, I'd be very interested in your comments as well. And we do have some ARS kind of things. In fact, let's do the first one. Now, when they asked me if I wanted to do ARS, I said I have to, because those are my initials, ARS. And it was named after me, of course. So if we could put up the first question. Innovation, as it regards to technology leadership, is mostly a passing fad, a luxury few have time to devote to, a necessary skill set, not really that important in the scheme of things, and not sure what it really is. Depending upon how you answer, this could be a very short session. Okay. Good. It's going to be a long session. We're going to go right through lunch. So with that, Bill.
Thanks, Alan. And first of all, I'd like to thank NASCIO for the invitation down here. Being a city CIO, coming to network and mingle with the state CIOs is great. I have a great relationship with John Ledgford up at the Commonwealth. It's been a really important relationship for us. Also want to thank you for making me be in Philadelphia when the Patriots and the Red Sox both had these incredible wins yesterday. But the real person who's going to thank you is the person I gave my playoff tickets to last night. So they'll be down to send everybody a check. I was thinking about this whole issue of the role of a CIO and how do you balance innovation and keeping the trains running, or changing the tires while the car is going, or whatever it might be. And this morning in the Wall Street Journal, there was a quote about what they should be looking for in the next leader of Microsoft. And they talked about a person that was steeped in technology, who can spearhead innovation, and can run a large, sprawling organization. And then the comment was they should be looking for a CIO, because that's the nature of the job that we do, right? It's all about balance, and it's about leadership, and how do you make sure that in today's digital age that you're moving your organization and tooling your organization appropriately so that we can handle these dramatic changes that are going on across society as well as in government. So in the city of Boston, I was really fortunate. I was working in the private sector for all of my career and came into a role in the city of Boston at the end of 2006 that was the first time that the city had created a CIO position that worked directly for the mayor, the CEO of the city, and sat on his cabinet. So it gave me an ability to kind of define it. I always tell, and the mayor always says, that the position was put in the right place, but it really didn't have a lot of definition at that time. So I was able to come in, develop my relationship with my boss, but also start thinking about how the city needed to think about technology differently than it had in the past. And it goes right to the core of the subject of this panel, is that things were changing quickly. Clearly, the city government and the systems and the networks around city government needed to be changed, and you needed to do that in an effective way. And so in our world, part of that started with just kind of building platforms. You can't have credibility and innovation if you can't deliver core services. So we needed to make sure that we were getting the trains on the track and then making sure they were running on time. It was about building networks. It was about making sure services like email and being able to access applications and all those things that become more and more and more a part of any of your agency delivering their services. We really needed to develop the organizational capability to do that in a solid way, because that credibility led to the conversations with the mayor and the CFO about funding the projects that we wanted to implement that were going to allow the city to move to the next level in technology. And I consider all of that creating project management offices and creating the capabilities in your IT organization to deliver great services on a day-to-day basis, great project-related services. That was table stakes. That, for us, was the blocking and tackling that needs to get done every day. And fortunately for us, it also allowed us the ability to start thinking about innovation in a more sustainable way. So in Boston, the way we think about it is we think about, think about a highway and think about lanes on a highway. And one of those lanes was our innovation lane, and we realized that just with the pace of technology change and what we needed to do to become a digital business as the city of Boston government, and how do we deal with the digital natives that are growing and becoming more and more a part of our citizenry out there, that we needed to go quickly, we needed to establish some quick wins, and we needed to let people know that every IT project wasn't going to take a year or 2 years to go from definition to implementation. So in Boston, we created an office. We call it the Office of New Urban Mechanics. And that was our innovation team. And it was a small number of folks. And the goal there was to take ideas, and as Alan said earlier, innovation is about solving old problems new ways and leveraging all these great tools that we now had available to us in the technology world, in mobility and social platforms and cloud computing, all of those things. So we were able to create that office, dedicate them to coming up with good ideas, take some risk, implement quickly, and get feedback from our customers, from the constituents, from the city agencies. And what we were able to do there is to develop a pipeline of quick-moving, interesting projects that have turned into a great portfolio for us of innovative products that not only does Boston use, but in some cases other cities and collaborations that we have with the Commonwealth. And then on the other side of keeping the trains running, as a CIO, you want to be in that business. You want to be in the business of keeping the trains running as well as this interesting stuff that's creating innovation and digital business opportunities for us. But there, it's a multi-lane highway that you needed to go faster and faster. Maybe not quite as quickly as your innovation team, but you needed to figure out organizationally, how do you keep pace? How do you solve the talent issues, maybe the service delivery issues that you had, but also make sure that you're accelerating how that organization deals with the agencies, supports the innovative projects. And so what we've been able to do is create that balance of an organization, the core organization, that's getting smarter, more innovative, quicker to market, and working in parallel with an innovation team and work them together in a seamless way that allows us to really benefit from all the opportunity that we have with the drastic change in technology that happens every day. So as Boston looks at it, we've had some success. There's lots more for us to do, but it's the ability to balance those two things, to make progress in each of those areas with one focus, and the focus in Boston is all about the citizen. It's about the quality of life in the city, and the mayor directs us to make sure that whatever lane you're in, the innovation lane or the blocking and tackling lane, the goal is government is here to serve people, and we're here to make the quality of life in the city better, and having that alignment is what's allowed us to make great progress across the board in Boston.
Michael.
Thanks, and I love listening to Bill talk about what's going on in Boston. I spent 5 or 6 years in local government in Baltimore, and loved the experience. And Mayor Menino was just a model for a lot of the stuff that we wanted to do in Baltimore. I also need to point out that until about 30 minutes ago, I thought this would be like one of those breakout sessions, and we'd be in a little conference room with about 30 of you guys. And so if I had realized we would be here, I might have chosen a different pair of socks. But need to point that out. So I've been at the state of Maryland as the Chief Innovation Officer for about 13 months. And I had a predecessor, Brian Sivak, who did a great job in about the year that he was there before I was. And Maryland's made a lot of progress in the last 5 or 6 years. The luxury of my job is that I don't have an IT organization to run. I've got Isabel Fitzgerald, who's the state's Chief Information Officer and runs the Department of Information Technology. And if you guys haven't met her yet, I hope you do soon. And for about 5 years before that, we've had Elliot Schlanger, who many of you know, who was the first Chief Information Officer for the state of Maryland, and is now kind of taken on the unenviable task of leading cybersecurity for the state of Maryland. But so in 5 or 6 years, I mean, Maryland went from not having a Chief Information Officer and not having a department dedicated to information technology to not only having both of those things, but also having someone, and it's just me, who's responsible for innovation at the state. But the great thing about it is that while there's I tell people a lot when they ask about the job. I mean, when you're a Chief Innovation Officer, the first thing everybody says is that's a cool title. And then they say, well, what do you do? And that's a hard one to answer sometimes. But there's a technology component to most everything I do. But because we have my wingman in Isabel or Elliot over there to kind of handle a lot of the technology stuff, I get to focus on making progress on the governor's strategic goals, whether they have a technology component or not. But again, we work together really seamlessly, and it's been an exciting thing to be a part of, kind of this, the acceleration of innovation and IT in the state for the last 5 or 6 years.
Cool. Joe.
Good morning, and welcome to Pennsylvania. Joe Duklensky, I'm the Director of the Governor's Innovation Office in Pennsylvania, and I do have to admit that, and tell you a secret, that I am not an information technology person. That being said, just like Mike, I get the privilege of working with 70,000 employees around the Commonwealth to make innovation happen every day. I will say that in order to make that work, I have the privilege of probably working with some of the best IT professionals on the planet, and collaboration has been the key that makes our trains run. Our Chief Information Officer is right across the hall from me. There's never a time where we don't have the opportunity to sit and chat, and if either one of us needs something, we talk, we're able to work things out. It is a true collaboration, and I think in order to keep the trains running on time, to keep with the theme, I think collaboration is such an important part of how to do that. I think the other part is patience. There are many times in my 34 years in state service that I wanted something to happen tomorrow, because it's part of my job is to make sure things happen and to carry out the governor's vision of our cost savings, creating change in the way we do business, and providing a better customer experience for our 12 million Pennsylvanians. But if you don't have patience, not to say that it's going to take a year to get something accomplished, but if you don't have the patience in order to work through the resistance to change, to help people let go, then I don't think you're going to be very, very successful. So the key, in my view, is patience, working with folks to help them overcome that resistance to change, and truly offering people time to think. So many times in a headlong rush to get a project finished, we don't have time to think. We don't put time aside to plan where we want to go and how we want to get there. Think time is very, very important. And so to that, I say thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I'll turn it over to
Hi. So Adel Ibaid, Chief Innovation Officer for the great city of Philadelphia. Welcome. For all of you Eagles fans, we made sure we won one for you yesterday. And for any of you who are Boston Red Sox fans, there's a reason why I'm sitting here and Bill Oates is all the way at the other end. But we're actually great friends. We don't let sports get in the way. And Mike, I love your Sox. You fit right in Philadelphia. So there's a job here for you if you want. I don't know if any of you noticed, but how many people think Mike looks like the guy House on House?
Haven't
Right.
heard that before.
Just like Bill Covey, who's the CIO for Washington County, looks exactly like the chef God, what's his name? Famous chef. That's right. So, Chief Innovation Officer, I actually have the luxury of owning the entire IT portfolio in the city. The resources, the assets, the projects, the budget, and of course the headaches. So I'm literally one throat to choke. The toughest challenge is trying to strike that right balance between keeping the railroad running, growing, and helping the organization change the culture so that it can take risk and think more of doing things differently. Innovation is very misunderstood. It's clearly in vogue. A lot of mayors, governors, and legislators want it, but I'm not sure that they all know why they want it. We talk about it in Philadelphia in the context of innovating with intent. If you're really not doing something with the end in mind and trying to make sure that you're always adding some positive change to people's lives, then it's not worth pursuing. I have a ton of examples that I will talk about as far as how Philadelphia perhaps does things differently, but I don't want to cannibalize the time. I'll turn it over to Alan, and maybe I could answer those things through my responses.
Cool. Well, excellent beginning here. When we think, one common theme is having the time to think differently, to step out of our boxes and think in a different way. So that leads us to our next ARS question, which is giving you a chance to figure out how much time do you spend simply keeping the trains running and the lights on? Cool. Very interesting. We did a survey about 2 years ago to our members of cities and counties, and the answer was that 95 to 96% of the time was spent putting out fires. That was the other thing we haven't said, putting out fires, keeping the trains running, but we kind of said it more positively. And next time we'll do this, we'll have someone from transportation here as well, which leads us to the next question, which is how much time do I spend trying to be innovative as well as getting my staff to become innovative as well?
Music interludes.
Okay, I would like to meet with those under D later on after this session. Very cool. Now notice these two numbers don't add up between this and the other, but I understand. But it's a challenge in terms of having the time. So Bill, let me ask you a question. You spent quite a few years in the private sector in the hotel hospitality business. how do you see innovation both in the private sector and what you're able to apply in the city?
Well, first of all, just to give you a little background, I was the CIO at Starwood Hotels, which is Sheraton, Westin properties. So quite candidly, I still get a little creeped out when I'm in a Marriott, so apologize. But I think in the, my view is, we did a lot of innovation, but, I was in the travel industry and the CIO of a major hotel chain when, we went through that transition from when, folks in senior management in our organization never felt that anyone would effectively book a hotel room online. And then the dramatic change that happened, that not only did everyone need to book online, but we had all these travel intermediaries arise, like Expedia and Travelocity and others. So our whole business model about distributing our product got challenged, which forced us, to innovate. So my feeling is that you go through the ups and downs, in the private sector that, challenge you to change your organization, to do things differently, et cetera. And part of that is, to some extent, forced innovation because there's revenue opportunities or expense issues that you need to deal with. And I think when I got to government, my sense was that challenge, so this is back in 2006 into 2007, is that even though there were fiscal challenges to government entities, there was never that real burning platform that required you to change dramatically. It required you to innovate. So to me, there were two factors. One is certainly as we hit 2008, the fiscal challenges became more, and the sense of urgency about changing the way, and again, doing more with less became critical. But the other part of it that was real key for us is the change in technology and the evolution of the tools that were now available to us. So as we were thinking about innovation, as we were thinking about transforming how we connected with our constituents, we now had things available to us that just weren't available before. So in Boston, our first real entry into doing something in an innovative way is I had been challenged by the mayor to kind of fix constituent services in the city of Boston. Boston always had a great intent, always had a 7-by-24-hour mayor's hotline where you could call anytime about any issue in the city and a human being would answer that call. So we had great intentions. The problem was once we took that call, we really didn't have any good systems or platforms underneath it to make sure that we were going to deliver on that service that someone was looking for. So we were challenged to do that and built, some new, used, the old blocking and tackling stuff. We ran good projects, picked good partners for the technology, implemented a new CRM, our citizen engagement hub, put all those platforms together, which gave us the ability now to take that call and also make sure that the work would get distributed to the right folks effectively, and, as importantly, gather really good data about how we were doing on all those things. So that was kind of this side of the house, implement a system effectively. But at the same time, we had this conversation about how can we take this service, it's a call center, it's people calling a phone number, it's 311, and how can we do something a little bit differently? And we had talked about how much people had enjoyed the experience they were having as smartphones were getting, more intelligent and easier to use. And as we looked at some of the consumerization and the surveys that were going on out there, our conversation internally was, why can't we use that technology and put it on top of this great little platform we just built and find a new way to engage and to reach out to our constituents? Because as I said earlier, our focus for innovation has always been the constituent. How can we engage our constituents more effectively than we have in the past? And that's when we designed, back in 2009, when we launched our first version of Citizens Connect, which was a mobile app that was incredibly well received by the constituency, not only because now they had a mobile app that they could download. We found that the constituency that was using it had never called the hotline before because, in their words, they used to believe that calling the hotline was complaining, but now we gave them an app and they felt like they were helping. They felt like they were being the eyes and ears of the city and helping us report potholes or streetlights that were out or trash didn't get picked up. So we had a great reception to that. And other than the app, The other thing that was happening is because we were getting such great data off our new platform, we were actually delivering the services on time. And so the good news for me is when my mayor would go out, and he would be out every night at a different dinner talking to folks, people would come to him and say, boy, Mayor, this app is really cool. I really like being able to connect to the city this way. And by the way, that pothole got fixed, within the next day or within the next 2 days. And so for us internally, the light bulb went off with the mayor, with all these department heads, and said, you know what? This is something that we need to do, and we need to find a way to widen that part of the highway and to find a better way to do this. So I think in the private sector, we kind of got forced into it for changes in the business or changes in the financial health of the industry and of the company. I think in government, it took a little longer to get there, but I feel as though there is an incredible critical mass of innovation going out now in government, and I think that the cultural changes that are needed, because that's the other difference, right? In the private sector, it was a little bit easier on the hiring and firing side, but in Boston, this critical mass has come to the point where we have innovation happening everywhere, and it has become part of the culture based on the messaging that the mayor has given us over the last 5 or 6 years.
So let me ask Joe this question. What was the thinking of having this Office of Innovation? How long has it been around, and what might be some of the successes? And what is the official role in working with the state CIO?
Well, the vision was our governor's, because Governor Corbett felt that we needed to look at ways that we could definitely reduce our costs. Number two, we had to look at ways that we could do things faster and smarter. And number three, there was that customer service. It was important to get service to the customer faster, better, and cheaper. We've been around for about 17 months. And at this point, we've had the ability, working with 38 other agencies, and I'm Switzerland, by the way. I don't do innovation. I facilitate innovation. I hopefully nicely bring people together, different state agencies together. But we've been able to accomplish 159 different innovations in those 17 months, saved almost $400 million in the process. And that came from not one individual, but many individuals. We have a talented workforce, and those are the folks who know the answers. And letting those folks express themselves, creating that environment where, from the top, people knew their idea is valued and had the ability to express it. You'd be amazed. We were amazed at the level and depth of ideas, and they just keep coming along. We've been able to reduce our vehicle fleet, for example, by 20%. Saved us $40 million. Our unemployment compensation folks, working with our information technology folks, were able to create a match to show folks who are incarcerated who should not be receiving unemployment compensation, because they had been. You would think that would be something that would happen automatically, but it did not. Intrepid folks got together, $104 million savings. So it builds, and as successes are known, as you let people know, other successes will come about, and we've been very fortunate.
Cool. Michael, a similar question to you. You mentioned that you're relatively new to the position, and the vision there, and how does that officially relate to the other functions of government, including the CIO?
Yeah, so, I might have mentioned this before. I mean, the way that I'm measured, it sounds like Joe's got a really good system for kind of measuring the number of projects and the delivery and the cost savings and stuff like that. And we have some stuff like that. But ultimately, I think my success, at least the way that I measure my success, is on how much progress we're making on the governor's 16 strategic goals. They're in 4 areas. One's around opportunity, one's around public safety, one's around the environment, and one's around public health. And so what we try and do is come up with new ways of addressing these kind of challenges that the state has. And we've got great examples in all of those categories. One I'll mention in public health is that we're the first state, I think, unless Delaware might have beat us to it, to have all 47 of our acute care hospitals in the state share hospitalization data. And so if you want to do something like reduce preventable hospitalizations, which we do explicitly, you kind of need to know where they are and what the characteristics of your frequent flyers are. Asthma is a treatable condition, and nobody wants to see someone have to be hospitalized 6 times a year because they aren't getting their asthma treated appropriately. But until you kind of have the dots on a map and have that data shared on a common platform, it's difficult to come up with some public health strategies to address it. So we've got the platform now to do that. The other thing I'll mention is that before I came, there was this great kind of infrastructure, I think, to do innovation, which in Maryland we call StateStat, and Beth Blower, who ran StateStat for a long time for the state of Maryland, is here. If you're familiar with the kind of stat concept of performance measurement, and the rhythm of it, it's this idea that every 2 weeks or 4 weeks, an agency provides a bunch of data, it gets analyzed, and they come in and have a conversation. And it really is much more conversational, I think, than it began 10 or 15 years ago when we started doing this, where the conversation was a little bit more pointed. But I think it's a great infrastructure to identify issues, to identify opportunities for improvement, and to take a little bit of time to work with the really smart people in state government to think of some ways we might be able to move the ball forward in those areas, and then come back and have a discussion about how we're going to implement it. So, having that process already has been very valuable for trying to make progress in the strategic goals.
Cool. So I guess what I'm hearing and seeing based on the ARS response that innovation is a new requirement, the new imperative. And in some cases, we're seeing here on stage different models of how this works in terms of having it separated out or having one person. And whatever works, works. I think that's the most important thing. I think what's interesting is when Adele was being wooed by the city of Philadelphia, he was less than 2 years shy of a very nice retirement, and was the state CIO, and now was having the opportunity. The city was looking for a chief information officer, a CIO. Now what they got was a CIO. But in the course of negotiations and discussions, Adele kind of raised the bar from that point of view and said, I'm going to let you say the rest of the story.
Sure, show how crazy I was.
No, I wasn't trying to point that out.
So, first of all, I truly think that I don't know that there's a big difference between being, whether the I stands for information or whether it stands for innovation. I do truly believe that they are 2 different roles, but they don't necessarily need to be 2 different people. I actually, in fact, my advice to a lot of mayors and town managers that do call is that I don't just hire a second person to be your chief innovation officer, because they're going to work really well together in the first month or 2, but they're going to drive each other crazy. They're going to be miserable together. Really try to understand what's prompting you to look for a chief innovation officer, and ask yourself, why can't I empower my information officer to do those things? So we actually, believe it or not, we did slow down a couple of mayors from hiring a chief innovation officer and going back and at least doing that due diligence. So Philadelphia did start by looking for a CIO. Actually, in fact, the gentleman before me, a real visionary, great guy, was actually a CTO to sort of, as a symbolic gesture to show how connected he was to technology. But after listening to the mayor, after listening to the managing director, I really thought that there's an opportunity for the CIO to rise above just managing the day-to-day technology operation and perhaps play the role of a matchmaker. And I think CIOs can be best at playing that role. And what I mean by matchmaking is don't necessarily look to insource everything. Look at a very creative way to sort of have a blend of insourcing and outsourcing to solve your problems. Start espousing some operating principles that really sort of start to get you away from the drinking out of a fire hose that we all find ourselves in. And by the way, I lived 23 and a half years of it in New Jersey, where every day I was just kind of drinking out of a fire hose. Some of the principles are, go ahead and embrace cloud. I'm not saying rush to it irresponsibly and blindly rush to it, but have sort of a cloud-first type of strategy where you actually have a target for yourself to take 20 or 30% of the portfolio out to the cloud, and let's say in the first year or by the second year. Start measuring your success on how much you're reducing the footprint inside your data center, not necessarily increasing the size of your data center. There's really no strategic value at the end of the day to having this big, large thing that you maintain. It's a distraction. It takes you away from finding time to be innovative. All of us talk about transparency and open data, but it needs to be genuine and authentic. So start to understand what constituents want, what citizen participation means, and what civic innovation and community engagement means. Look for opportunities to bump and connect. So look for opportunities to take an open data program and bump it up with a GIS program, because in the future, GIS could play an excellent role of being a visualization tool to all the data that's out there. Think of the magic and the power that you can create if you can help citizens visualize a city's budget or a state budget. Prepare for the future. The future is going to bring about the Internet of Everything, and that means sensors in the legacy built environment, and there's going to be tons and tons of data coming out. Well, how do you make some meaning out of that data to improve citizens' lives and just some positive meaning? And by the way, I don't think I can have time to think as an innovation officer if I didn't go out and hire the best chief operating officer I can get to really kind of take care of the day-to-day, because somebody has to do that. So the mayor gave me the flexibility to rebuild the team. I thought I would focus on innovation from day one, but clearly I needed to spend the first year really securing and stabilizing the infrastructure. And once we did that, we gained credibility in our ability to reach out and help our agencies think of innovative solutions. We have a thriving startup community out here in Philly, and they need one thing to prove out their concepts: data. They need data sets. So you're going to hear later on from our great Chief Data Officer, Mark Head, about how he uses that data as a currency in the city of Philadelphia. We also try to pivot around who's responsible for solving day-to-day problems. Employee engagement is very important, like Joe and Mike said, but community engagement is equally important. So going out in the community, aligning technology with some business programs, like in our case, Philly Rising, where we go in underserved communities and help them stand up and bring all the right resources so they can take back their neighborhood, and we bring technology to support them and help them do that. So I really feel that my role most of the time is that of a matchmaker. I go out and I force things to bump and connect. If a good idea can bump with another good idea, an excellent idea can come out. So that's what I feel my role is most of the time.
Cool. So that leads me to the next ARS question. There's no wrong answer. This is kind of just a perception question. Is there a need for a chief innovation officer separate from that of a CIO in your opinion? Now, this is a loaded question because most of you are CIOs. So, I thought it'd be a fun question.
Come on, let's twist again, like we did last summer. Yeah, let's twist again.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
See, I saved this question after Adele spoke. I thought that would have changed things. I guess we could have gotten a different response if we asked the question differently by saying reporting to the CIO. right? See, then we would have a very different response. So we can see now there's a time management issue to this. There is an executive piece to this in terms of having somebody, in this case the governor or the mayor, really supporting this. Where do you think we're going to be 5 years ago? I mean, right now, this is kind of new. Innovation is kind of a term that we're suddenly embracing. You know, this is not in the public administration literature. So we're kind of trailblazers. Everyone up here is doing something slightly different. We're defining it as we go. Where do you think we're going to be 5 years with innovation? Well, it's kind of like I look at innovation. It's like excellence. Remember, we're chasing after that, all the books and everything about excellence. And I think we all learned that it was not a destination, it was a journey. And I think with this, it's similar. Bill?
So first of all, I mean, you look at the answers to that poll question. You know, as a CIO, you know, there may be in an organization a need for some level of separateness, right? Some level of separateness for the innovation activity. But as a CIO, you know, that reason shouldn't be that the CIO doesn't have that vision, right? That the CIO doesn't want to change, that the CIO doesn't understand the trends that are happening and what's required to transform how your agency or your government is going to deliver the constituent experience that's needed in the 21st century. So my view, very much like Adele's, is that this is the good stuff, right? I mean, I take a lot of pride in the fact that I can be pretty good at helping a team build a fiber network, or helping a team do a PeopleSoft financials upgrade, or helping a team, you know, figure out some of those blocking and tackling issues that happen every day, which now include building an organization that can handle the importance of data. So how are we going to move from having data that's just descriptive and maybe diagnostic to being predictive and then prescriptive, right? How do I build those capabilities in an organization so as these data sources continue to go wild, that we as government are going to be able to handle the open data issues, the business analytic issues that are going to allow us to move forward? I mean, that's kind of cool stuff that still sits in that IT part of the organization. But you know, what we really want to be involved in is all these other interesting things that are going on. And so as we look to the future, you know, as painful as the progress seems sometimes to us in government, you know, we are evolving to become a digital business like private sector companies are as well. And I think that a lot of the chief innovation officer work, or in private sector, a lot of the chief digital officer work, it's about change management, right? Is how do you leverage these tools, all these things that are available, whether it's the availability of all this data, whether it's what's happening with mobility, whether it's the interactions that you can now have through social media, you know, whatever those things are, that, you know, that's all change management. And as you all well know, it's not just change at the top level, it becomes that really tough business process change underneath it that exists in all our governments. But my sense is that over time, we too become a digital business, and that need, you know, for someone specific to be creating, you know, the technology-enabled change that a lot of innovation officers are dealing with now. I mean, maybe that does go away at some point and be, you know, my department. So I'm a chief information officer from a title perspective, but my organization is the Department of Innovation and Technology. I mean, I expect that my team is going to change over the next 5 years. As Adele said, we're not going to be running data centers. We're not going to be worried about keeping the email servers up. We're not going to be doing that in my organization. We're going to be doing these other things. And I think it all becomes part of this digital business enablement that all of us need to be part of. And I think, again, from a CIO perspective, you need to be the leader, right? You need to be, you know, that kind of, that person who's sitting at the cabinet or sitting with the CEO to make sure that all these pieces are coming together appropriately to deliver the end product, which is, again, be a more efficient government and deliver the services that your constituents need.
Cool. Michael, the future.
Yeah, no, and I would just concur with Bill in that I think, you know, 5 years from now, it'll be much more about this structure for change management and for whatever's next. And what I don't think it'll be is, I mean, when you're a chief innovation officer, a lot of like your portfolio right now is things like cloud and mobile, and I think 5 years from now that won't be the case, because I heard a funny story on a podcast the other day, and it wasn't about technology, it was about sports, but it was a guy, so I went to college, I'll date myself, in the early 90s, and it was guys about my age, and they told a funny story about a roommate like a guy who lived in their dorm who had a computer. And his nickname was Computer, because he was the one guy that like had a computer. And then 5 years later, or however many it was, like nobody would nickname someone Computer anymore because everybody had them. And so I think 5 years from now, it's not going to be about the solutions that we think are part of the innovation world right now, mobility, cloud, maybe even analytics. But it's going to be more about this process to do whatever's next.
Cool. Joe.
First of all, I won't tell you when I went to college. We'll just leave it at that. It was a long time ago. But I think 5 years from now, we are to a point where a program manager in the Department of Aging is faced with organizing a program. And the first question that comes to mind is, who else does this affect? What other agency might be doing this? And that person picks up the phone and reaches out to the Department of Public Welfare, the Department of Health, the Department of Education. 5 years from now, hopefully we've created that collaboration. That first question that comes to your mind is not, oh my God, what kind of budget do I have? But who else is doing this and who else can help me?
Adele.
So I think 5 years from now, I actually think we're going to come full circle, and let me explain where my madness here. I actually think 5 distinct roles are going to sort of emerge. I think those who continue to hang on to infrastructure and have an interest in sort of innovating more along the lines of shared infrastructure, shared services, are clearly going to be the chief infrastructure officers, and I think there's going to be a very critical and much needed role for them. But they're probably going to align more either alongside communities of interest or affinity groups or groupings of agencies, or even along with the business agency itself. So I don't think you're going to see, I think you're going to see more federated with that and less consolidation and centralization. And their role is probably going to be sort of, they're the gatekeepers of the private government cloud, whether that's city, county, or state, and they're really becoming more of the brokers, helping their clients provision up, down, consume private cloud services sort of on their own terms and on demand. And then I think you're going to see the chief innovation officers perhaps become much more public-facing, and their portfolio I think is going to grow and bleed into other areas outside of technology, frankly, arts and culture, non-IT related innovation. I actually think we're seeing a couple of that already, whether it's in Austin or definitely in Austin. And then I think you're going to see the one thing that's common, that's strong today, and it will be even stronger in 5 years, is that, and it's not going away, is that if you think we're collecting, data today, and that's why we came up with the term of big data, it's probably even going to be bigger data in 5 years. So I actually think the real chief innovation officer role is going to reemerge, and I think the chief data officer is likely to be a chief information officer, but truly focused on information management, not just exposing data, but figuring out how good data can go back to the real systems. And then I think there's might see the emerging role of a chief inspiration officer, somebody who could rally the troops. I'm trying to think of all the I's, what they could stand for here. Bottom line is that a person that does not embrace a single role and think about where they're going to be in 5 years and how they can get there, might very well be a chief irrelevant officer and might not even be needed at all. Can I come up with any more ayes? I think that's it. So I really think it's I actually think we're going to come full circle.
Okay.
I think information is going to really focus on information because we're going to be collecting tons and tons and tons of data. Not only the sensor data that's going to be in the built environment or the wearables that people like Google and Samsung are coming up with, but also because the citizen is the biggest sensor that there is. So I think there's going to be a lot of data to collect, and we're going to go back to our original role of information officers.
So the good news for those of you who are CIOs is don't change your title. You're either going to be the Chief Infrastructure Officer, the Chief Innovation Officer, the Chief Inspirational Officer, the Chief Innovation Officer, or the Chief Irrelevancy Officer. Now, I have a friend from the Czech Republic who is looking at how we organize here, and he says, you have many chiefs and no Indians. We really do have an awful lot of, I'm sorry?
There's an Indian there.
So we do, but
only one.
only one. That still makes my point. So you don't have to change the name on your door. If you just stay here long enough, everything will be fine. It will evolve, right? So are there any questions from the audience that you would like to ask of the panel or make a comment? Yes. Is there a microphone? Yes, right up there. Someone's coming. Thanks, Eric.
Good noon. I found Adele's answers to be very interesting. And then the results of the question to be even more interesting considering Adele's answer, because as Adele was speaking, I was thinking that doesn't the existence of the Chief Innovation Officer marginalize the Chief Information Officer's role? Then the next question further, Adele's answer to the next question further reinforced my thinking. Isn't the different eyes that you delineated just a separation of all the competencies that a Chief Information Officer should have?
Yeah, so I think the answer to the first question, I think I was very careful in saying, I started out by saying they are clearly two different roles, but they don't necessarily need to be the two different people. In fact, I would hope that those who are really genuine and authentic about what they want to accomplish, I hope that they would give the traditional CIO an opportunity to succeed, empower that individual, because they have all the right skills and tools. Sometimes they're forced into the back office because no one else is accountable for keeping the railroad running. So I personally think they are two individuals. Two different roles, but I would hope that they're the same individual. That we're not creating two, because the minute we do, and I think there are some examples around the country where neither one of them becomes successful, frankly. They both get in each other's way, and it's not and in the beginning, by the way, I think in the first 3 to 4 months, both of them will say, oh no, we work very well together, we're extensions of each other, until the first conflict, and there's no adult in between them to mediate. And then you have the traditional CIO saying, everything that's sexy and it's in the paper, the innovation officer gets credit. Every time there's an outage, the information officer gets the blame. So I don't think, the advice at least I give mayors and town managers is that don't set yourself up for that type of situation. If you wake up one day and you find that you need a chief innovation officer, look back, try to understand why that CIO hasn't been able to deliver for you. Make sure it's not something you've done. And if you can't clear out that situation, then perhaps hire a single CIO that would play both roles for you.
Let me just add, for those in the room, and I agree with Adele from my travels and what I hear at the local end, is that sometimes we don't have that choice. If the governor's already going ahead and making these determinations, then we have to, how do we make this better? So that would be another session. And the other is, as a preemptive strike, I always say if you're being run out of town, get in front of it and call it a parade. So maybe what that means is maybe you need to hire somebody yourselves, those of you who are CIOs in the room, and say, I need to preempt this because I want this to be in my tent and I want to be able to work and be able to manage those processes. And so maybe it means hiring a manager or somebody that reports to the CIO, just like you have a chief data officer and whatnot.
Yeah.
But Bill?
But I do think, I'll give you our experience in Boston. And again, part of this is about relationships. I mean, we're all in this for the public service aspects of what we do and what we're trying to deliver. In Boston, we didn't go looking for a chief information officer or specifically for an innovation function. We found that, that we needed that role as we started to have some success with the innovation activities. And the way we looked at it is we really needed to have kind of an open door into city government for people that would come in with ideas, and they might be somebody from a department, they might be a local entrepreneur, they might be somebody from higher ed. And so we essentially took a person from the IT organization, a person from the mayor's office, and essentially enabled them, a couple really smart young resources, to spend all their time on those kinds of things, right? So this was the dedicated resources, a place to take some risk, which was not kind of the natural way that we worked in city government. And we formalized it, right? We had some success with it. We formalized the entity, and we called it the Office of New Urban Mechanics. And we were able to create the blend where we have a Department of Innovation and Technology that's doing all the blocking and tackling, but also plays a key role in all the innovation activities. But we had that level of separateness, right? We located it next to the mayor's office to make sure that it was tightly aligned to everything that was going on and every issue that the mayor was dealing with. And from a governance perspective, it was pretty easy, right? It was me and the mayor's chief of staff that did a very lightweight governance on the priorities and the pipelines of the innovation team. But most importantly, what it became is a very close working relationship between both of those entities that has allowed us to kind of move forward, create momentum, and quite candidly, take the information technology side of the house, at least from a formal organizational structure, and make it more innovative. Right? My view now is that a huge part of the core IT organization are now essentially New Urban Mechanics, because what they're working on are the innovative opportunities that are coming in that door and finding ways to make sure that as we're building mobile apps and doing other interesting things and working with a mother of an autistic child who had an idea of how to create an autism education app on tablets because she had spent her life, doing graphical things to help explain to her son, what are the best ways to identify the test to brush your teeth or to get ready for school in the morning. Those are things that might not have come into the door, of the IT organization, but come into this new open door that was kind of placed a little bit separately. But to us, it's that working relationship. I still believe in my own role as the CIO of the city. I play that role, of trying to make sure that we are leveraging all the capabilities that are coming across, mobility and social and big data and all those things. Work very tightly aligned with the innovation team. So, again, do I think as a CIO you should want that and you should be able to do that? Absolutely. But can you make it work? If for whatever reason your organization believes that you need this level of separateness, yeah, it's about putting worries about turf aside, putting worries about personalities aside, and get to the business of helping the city move forward.
Okay, one quick comment now.
Okay.
I see the red, just real quick though. I think a lot of us sit here and talk about, you fast forward 5 years from now and where we're all going to be. I think a lot of it has also to do with who we're reporting to and how we're organized. I know something that NASIO used to say quite a bit, and probably I'm sure they still say until today, is that the CIO at a state level and city level or wherever government jurisdiction really needs to sort of report directly either to the governor, to the mayor, The goal is not to have any buffers in between, to have a seat at the table of the mighty, have a seat when you are planning. So who you report into is going to have a lot to do with what kind of CIO you're going to be in 5 years, frankly. You're going to report into treasury departments or administration departments, reporting to the head CFO. You're more likely going to be heavy on the enforcement and the cost cutting and the bottom line, and less on the innovation side. So keep that in mind also, because I think as much as you have goals of what you want to achieve in 5 years, where you are organizationally structured also has a lot to do with it. So if you're not sitting someplace that's going to give you a clear path to what you want to do, you know what, you may want to consider doing something else. I hate to say it that way, but.
Okay. We're really out of time, but we have one last question.
Yeah, real quick. We're talking about innovation and we're talking about change. And we know that we put organizational change management into projects and such. But with the fast pace of innovations that we're looking at in the next 5 years, what are your thoughts about organizing organizational change management as part of your standing organization, a communications office? How to engage this kind of change in an organization?
Go ahead, Adele.
So a couple of examples of things we do here. And by the way, culture is probably our biggest thing to deal with. Because I could tell you that I've got 600 people who report to me, 600 out in the agencies, and another 600 consultants. So that's a pretty bifurcated support model. A couple of things we're trying to do is that we're in a couple of months we're going to be opening an innovation lab right in the city. And the purpose of the innovation lab is it's a combination of physical space and some virtual ideation and collaboration tools to intentionally try to bring some city employees to the table with the startup community, the private sector, and not-for-profits, and sort of force some ideation and some collaboration within that space so that we can start to tackle some of the cultural issues. I think people obviously fight change because they're, in most cases, don't understand it, but I think if you involve them in the process, I think they're likely to go back and be innovation ambassadors within their own agency. We're also working a partnership with the Philadelphia University locally here to create an innovation academy where we could take the 12 to 15 most likely to be innovators within their agency, hopefully not sitting in IT, frankly, but actually sitting in the business, and having them come together and actually teaching them some of the principles around innovation and innovation management, around ideation and around gating and getting your ideas to a successful completion. And at the same time, we're also going to give them some real projects, government pressure points to work on and to try to resolve. So I would say in 3 to 5 years, the best legacy I can leave behind is if I look back and I see 200, 300, 400 people willing to take risk, willing to challenge, some well-worn beliefs in government, and willing to listen to the community, be very responsive to the citizens, and always just thinking of innovating with intent and trying to add that positive value and not. It's not about mobile apps and hackathons for us, although we do quite a bit of that. It's really just about, can you go back and be a force of positive change and change some of that culture, and be willing to resist some short-term gains for that long-term benefit that you'll get, which is an innovation-friendly culture that is willing to take the risk.
That's an excellent question. I just want to add something to that, if I could, Adele, and that is there's another driving force. One is how we plan for change, developing and creating environment, development programs and whatnot. The other is going to happen more naturally. When we look at the demographics of those entering the workforce in the next 5 years, the millennials, many of which are in this room, will be the majority of the workforce. And their idea of work is very, very different. They're going to spend less than 5 years, 2 to 5 years in a position. And that's going to be a game changer in terms of culture, because now we're going to be in much more of a natural culture of change, where we have people that have different values coming into the workforce, and they're not going to stay as long, and therefore culture will change, especially as they replace many of you who will be retiring the next 5 years. So it's going to be a major, massive shift in the workforce at all levels of government. So I want to thank our panelists very much. And we are painfully aware that we stand between you and lunch. So with that, thank you.
You bet. Let me make 2 quick announcements here. First of all, thank you, Alan, Michael, Joe, Adele, and Bill. Great information we can take back. 2 quick announcements. First of all, where is lunch? Lunch is going to be down the hall in rooms H, I, and J. It's on this floor. It's starting, I think they're getting ready to serve right now. And we're going to have Ben Franklin join us for lunch. So he died, but I don't know. We'll let Craig sort that all out. Second announcement is please return to this room promptly at 1:30 so we can get our afternoon started. Thank you, everyone. Have a good lunch.